Hey, Build Show Network, Steve Basic Architect here. We're out at a job, and today we're talking about headers. How do I insulate them? Window rough openings. What are the parts? What does it all mean? We got a beautiful window opening behind me here on one of our projects. And I thought maybe before we talk about the pocket header and all of that, let's get a few pieces of the nomenclature down. So when I look at the rough opening here, we'll start with the sill. The sill is basically the board that frames the bottom of the rough opening, and it's a rough sill. Here it's the 2x6 frame, 24-inch on center. So we have a 2x6 sill. Underneath the sill, that's held up by what's called cripples. Cripples just follow that 24-inch common layout, but obviously they don't go up through the window, so they get cut off at the knees. They support the sill, hence the name cripples. On the side of the windows, we have the studs that go up to the bottom of the header. Those are called jacks or trimmers. Basically, they trim out the opening or they jack up the header. And then on the far outreach of the window rough opening is we have basically a common stud that goes all the way up to the top plate, and that's called the king stud. So those are our vertical members in our sill. Across the top of the window, we have what's called the header. Basically, it gets its name because it's heading off the rough opening. The rough opening being the opening in the wall that the frame makes up, right? So that's basically where our window goes. It's slightly oversized from the window. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a different video. But here we have what I term the pocket header. And a pocket header is nothing more than taking the components that are required to carry that load and push them out to the sheathing, revealing a slight pocket on the inside. Now, to complete that pocket, we have a 2x6, just like our sill, at the bottom of the header, and I call that the head plate. And what the head plate does is it just finishes out that rough opening to the same dimension of the rest of the opening, meaning that 5.5 inches. Now, the beauty of pushing the header tight up to the top plate is I can pick, in this case here, a 9.5-inch LVL as my header system. And because I have 5.5 inches, and those headers are 1 3/4, in the narrower windows, I just do a single ply. So I do 1 3/4. In some of the wider windows, like here, this actually gets a 2-ply, so we have 2 headers up there. And so the pocket is a little bit shallower. But the beauty of that is because I have that pocket, it allows the insulator, when they come to insulate the wall, they just simply insulate that pocket as another wall cavity. As well as when the framers are here framing the wall, they're just doing their thing without adding any extra components and rigid insulation and built up headers or any of that. So basically the framer does what the framer does when it's time for him to do it, and the insulator gets to do what the insulator does when it's time for them to do it. Let's take a quick walk. We're going to go over here. We're going to look at a couple more window openings that have slight variations from this one, and then we'll head back to the studio. But let's go check out these other 2 windows. All right, so we moved over to another section of the house. You can see this is a much smaller window, and conforming to the structural engineer's request of any window opening up to and including 3 feet can have a single jack. Anything that exceeds 3 feet moves on to a double jack. And then we do have some cases where maybe the windows are large enough where we get either an engineered wood column or the jack becomes a different system. But here you can see this is a smaller than 3-foot window, hence all of the components are the same. We still have our sill, we have our cripples, we have our king, we have our jack, but notice unlike the other window, this one has a single jack because it's a little less load. Remember, the idea of the header is nothing more than a beam. The roof load is going to come in, it's going to come into that beam and basically gets split theoretically and then comes down the trimmer and the king stud because they're acting like columns, and those take that load down into the floor frame and hence into the foundation and then into the ground, and that's what makes your building stand up. But I just wanted to point out here in the smaller opening, we moved down to that single jack. We have one more treat of a window. Let's go check that one out, and then we'll head back to that studio. All right, so we moved over to our last window. You can see this one's a monster. This thing is somewhere on the order of a little over 9 feet in both directions. This is the owner's bedroom. We're going to have a beautiful view out to the back courtyard here through this window. But the thing I wanted to point out here is, again, even though it's one of the largest openings in the house, all the components are the same. We have the sill, the cripples. In this case, we have double jacks, and we have our king. We have our double header that goes across there and the head plate. But the one thing to notice is because of the size of the opening, we moved from a standard 2x to an LVL 2x. Basically, these are just LVLs that are cut to the 1.5 by 5.5 inches. That makes for a little sturdier of a wall, a little more consistent. They're less likely to twist and warp, so we can maintain the geometry of that rough opening so the window fits in there nice and neat. So anyways, that's the 3 windows. Let's go back to the studio. We'll break out some details, some drawings, and we'll talk a little bit more about window rough openings.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that. Actually went around and talked about multiple options for windows. Now we got Big Red, we got some details, header schedule. It's all on the plate. So let's get after it. All right, everybody. So let's talk a little bit about rough openings and headers. Now, we were out at the job site. We went through a number of different window openings. You saw that we had different headers there. So typically, when I lay out my drawings, you can see we have a header schedule, headers A, B, C, D, all the way through F, and then we have, G8, H8, and basically that's for an 8-inch header, 10-inch header, and 2x12 header. These are, most of the time, those are being used interior, inside the house. But on the outside, you can see here, we have our typical, 9.5-inch LVL. It sits underneath that top plate. And then we have a head plate. But most importantly, we have what I call the header pocket. And the header pocket allows me to provide insulation. Now, sometimes in a 2-ply, it gets pretty shallow. But it's still there, a couple inches. I mean, a couple inches of closed cell, that gets you R13 there. So it's not, something to scarf at. Header C, obviously, when we pack the wall with a header because it's a large lift and slide door or something, there's not a whole lot we can do. The hope is that we also have some additional insulating sheathing on the outside that can assist in those conditions there. And you can see here, these are just moving up from the 9.5-inch to the 11 7/8, but the same pockets exist there. The header just increases in dimension there and allows us to have a much stronger header. So if we're at a place where we need it or want to push the head height down, whatever the case is, we can make that happen. But then anywhere, I just simply refer to, header A, B, C, D, E, F, or if we need to create a new one, sometimes we'll make a larger one. But if it's a one condition, sometimes I'll just write it out on the drawings, but we'll just drop those in on our framing plans, and then the framer can refer to the header schedule here and reference that. Couple other notes here. We talked about this. Spans up to and including 3 feet. Single 2x jacks. Anything that exceeds 3 feet. So 3 feet, say 1/16 of an inch. Well, that gets 2 jacks. All right. So up to 3 feet, single jacks. Up anything that exceeds 3 feet, and we get double jacks there. And that's just put out there so the framer knows. Now, coming over to the window rough opening, and you can see we basically have a wall frame elevation there, and then a plan here. And then we have the elevation here. I just show kind of a illustrative example of all of the components of what I call rough opening, and there's kind of multiple rough openings, right? There's the 2x frame rough opening, which is basically from jack to jack, and that one is before I put the zip liner in. So everything stems from the window unit dimension. So let's run through this right quick. If we have a window unit dimension of, let's say, 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Well, the first rough opening, or the rough opening for that window, is the unit dimension plus 1 inch, right? And that 1 inch is basically the 1/2 inch window rough opening. That's the airspace between the window frame or unit dimension and the final rough opening. So that means that our frame plus the 1 inch means that our rough opening for that window is actually 2 foot 1 inch by 3 foot. Now in the vertical there, we also add that 1 inch, so it'd be 3 foot 1 inch. Now, aside from that airspace or rough opening, you can see we add 1/2 inch zip liner to both jambs and the head. So the width on that rough opening goes from 2 foot 1 to 2 foot 2 inches for the width, and the height. Now the height is a little different because I add what I call the rip sill, and that's basically a sill that goes all the way back over the R9. This is assuming that we have zip R9 out here for this project. So that 1.5 inches plus the 1/2 inch there is 2 inches plus the 1 inch. So that is 3 foot 3 inches, right? It's the 3 foot 1 plus the 1.5 inches of the rip sill plus the 1/2 inch zip liner that goes there to maintain our weather resistive barrier continuity. So you can see we have multiple rough openings, and we have our unit dimension, we have basically our rough opening, and then this is our, what I call the rough 2x opening, or 2x frame, however you want to call it. But understand that putting that window in, it's imperative that we get this information to the framer, so that he's always asking, well, what's the ROs on these? What are the rough openings? So, you know, the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to give him a rough opening that's, you know, unit dimension plus 7/8, and then this one is, you know, 1 1/16 inches. So he's doing all this crazy math. It's pretty simple. We have a 2 foot window unit. It goes into a 2 foot 1 hole that is lined by zip that is framed at 2 foot 2. So the 2 foot 2, we add the zip, it goes down to 2 foot 1. We add the window, we get a 1/2 inch space around our 2 foot window, right? And likewise, the same with the vertical measurement there. We have our sill in there, our rip sill. So our rip sill, we start out with a 3 foot tall window. We add the 1/2 inch rough opening, it goes to 3 foot 1, but then we add the zip liner and the rip sill 2 inches, and that takes us to 3 foot 3 for the rough 2x framed opening there. So anyways, that is pretty much all of the planning that goes into it. And obviously, you know, the sill here is going to adjust in height to the window opening, whatever that unit dimension is, or what we say UD. As far as the header here, you can see there's the head plate, and then here is the double plates, and then this is our header here. And you can see that if we translated that to header A and we come over here, you'll see there's that plate at the bottom there. The double top plate is there, and then the header is there. And notice that there's a dashed line in there. That's a 2x4 cripple on the flat. So a lot of times builders want to, reinforce and keep that 2x from maybe going a little wonky or giving some drywall attachment, even though this is only 9.5 inches. So it clearly makes the span for drywall, but we'll put a 2x4 on the flat there in front of the header pocket that we can insulate around and behind, but then that gives us some attachment for trim and all of that good stuff also on the inside. But anyways, that's how I deal with rough openings when we're using a Euro style window. That's my header schedule. Now you're on the inside when it comes to rough openings, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Well, there you have it. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. This is one of the ways that I do it. So hopefully that was helpful. If you're looking for more help, Build Show Network, thousands of videos all across the gamut of buildings. So check it out. Me, myself, I got hundreds of them up there. So go check out my library. Check out the videos. Always some good nuggets in every video. So I make sure that we're putting up something that you can walk away with. So anyways, if you're looking for more, Steve Basic Architect on Instagram, or the Unbuild It podcast, where I team up with good friends Jake Bruton, Peter Yost, and we talk everything building industry. So have at it. And lastly, I just want to give a big shout out. Build Show Build Boston is in full swing. 24 episodes, and we're about a third of the way through it. These are nice feature length videos, upwards of an hour or so. We got bonus videos, all kinds of great stuff. Go check it out under the Originals tab, Build Show Network. Anyways, that's all I got for this week. So, Steve Basic Architect from the Build Show Network. Long live our buildings.